What is vegan?
Like, no animal products.
No animal product. You go your life just eat leaf. Why you don't know how to enjoy life? No vegan product. Go away. Go to other restaurant. Go eat your lettuce there. How are people vegan? Vegan don't know how to enjoy life. Crispy pork is the best thing in the world and they want to eat spinach. Hiya. Vegetable tastes like sand anyway. Don't eat vegetable.
Crispy pork is the greatest thing in the world. Joe Rossinello, I don't care what your view is of the pig, okay? If you put a pile of crispy pork in front of me, it's going down, okay? That's when I become the big 10-year-old fat Italian kid with a bunch of pork in front of me, and I'm taking it down. Joe, I need a comment from you right away because to me, that guy is great. That guy is fantastic.
You go away. You go away.
You want lettuce? It tastes like shit. Go get across the street. It's unbelievable. And people are going to be a little bit surprised here at the front line with Joe Pasillo and Joe Rossinello, going way into the breach as we always do on Thursday nights at 9 o'clock Eastern time. Joe, I'm being serious for a second. All right. We're going to laugh a little bit tonight. We're going to laugh. We're going to cry a little bit, I guess. Tonight's topic is death. And listen, I'm sorry. If you want to laugh at a woman like that talking about vegan and I won't put that stuff into my body. I once talked to a guy who I was a server with, because you know I'm in the restaurant industry. I served tables for a very long time. Waited on a very famous guy who was known to be a heroin addict. Seriously, I'm going somewhere with this. And it was a big group of people, and this actor happened to be a part of this group of people that were in the restaurant at that point. And my friend went up to that actor and said, sir, what kind of steak would you like? And he looked at my friend. And my friend told me the story. My friend was a very truthful guy. He said, come on, man, I don't put that poison into my system.
What was he
talking about a steak? Talking about a steak. He doesn't put that poison into his system, but he mainlines heroin, okay, and puts that into it. But my point is this. I don't know that girl, the actor I just described. I don't know what world they're living in. I really don't, Joe Rossinello. Because to me, if you want to eat vegetables and spinach and lettuce for the rest of your life, okay, and shave what? Or add a couple of years, and you can't even know how that will turn out, because anybody could get cancer. Anybody could get emphysema. Anybody could get a whole host of things that will end their lives. But if you're going to go through your life worried about you're not going to eat crispy pork, I'll tell you what. I'll take a couple years off the end. I want the crispy pork. I'm throwing it out there to you, Joe.
You go away.
You go away. You go away. But it's all about death, because, Joe, our culture, and this is why Joe and Joe are here, because our culture is consumed with death. Now, Joe, we're consumed with death too, because we're Roman Catholic. We know that through death, we move to eternal life. But the people in this world and the things we talk about on this show, Joe Rossinello, not for nothing, I think they worry about death so much because they have no hope, because that's their world view. And some people think I'm harsh when I say that, but the thing is, but if you don't believe in an afterlife, if you don't believe in heaven or hell, then all you're looking to do in this world is just expand your life however you can, for whatever reason you can, none of which seems to make much sense to me. Joe, I think you know where I'm going. I'm going to throw it over to you.
Well, ultimately, I think that's what we saw with COVID. I mean, clearly, no one wants to die. I don't want to die. I have kids.
You want to die?
But at the same time, you're not terrified. I could remember when my wife always laughs about this story. When 9/11 happened, I was 6 blocks away, maybe 8 blocks away, on the 32nd floor, watching the planes go into the World Trade Center. And my boss, who I liked a lot, who was, a secular humanist, typical New York lawyer. And to be honest with you, we were in the elevator together going down to get out of the building. Our building shook. People were going crazy. He looked like he was going to cry in the elevator. And I was with him. I was like, my wife laughs at this story. I was like, Norm. I was like, relax. I was like, relax. He was falling apart. And that, not that I wanted to live, but I wasn't falling apart. To be honest with you, I got down to the street and then I walked north. The point is what you're making, basically your point. When you don't have a belief system and things go awry, you fall apart.
Yes, you do.
And like I said, I saw that in real time.
Joe, take it out of the religious level for a second. Just take it out of there. Let's do Pascal's wager, okay? It's my own personal bastardization of Pascal's wager. If I'm right, if you're right, if the Catholic Church is right, okay, then my hope is placed in where it's supposed to be. That I don't fear death. Or I fear the circumstances. I think you would agree with me on this. I fear the circumstances of my death because I want to make sure that my wife and my son are okay. That's a normal, natural, fatherly thing to worry about, okay? That I worry about my family. As far as my eternal soul, Joe Resinello, if I'm close to Christ and the Catholic worldview is true, then that's really all I have to worry about, okay? Now, my larger point is this. I'll, again, take Pascal's wager, is that if I'm wrong, there is no regret because there is no God, there is no afterlife, there's no heaven, there's no hell, there's none of that. And I will never know it. And I would rather err, quite frankly, very practically, on the side of caution. And I think that a lot of people, Joe, they have their hope in this world. That's all they worry about. And you want to know, I'm going to tell you a group who worries about this, Joe. Let's talk about this, okay? And I don't care what the rest of the culture says and everything else, okay? Let's talk about, okay, tonight's June 6th. I guess June 1st is what we call Pride Month. Last time I checked, Pride was the first of the 7 deadly sins and was the first sin of God's creation, was the sin of pride. Evidently, Justin Trudeau wants to give it up in Canada, again, because what happens in Canada happens here and vice versa. So let's keep it with Justin Trudeau, and I'm going to throw it over to you. He wants to give, according to what I see, the LGBT trans people need $1.5 million for enhanced pride security in Canada. Joe, I have a lot to comment on, but at first I want to throw it over to you.
Ultimately, listen, no one should be persecuted individually. No one.
Absolutely.
Everyone should have respect. Everyone should have individual rights as an individual. No one is better than anyone else. We're all equal under the law. That's what we're supposed to be. We're not equal under the law, sadly, but we're supposed to be. Here we have this situation where we're giving money to people. People can't live in Canada, Joe. They can't eat. That's a waste of money. And here's another thing. At this particular time, I don't live in Canada, but I do work in New York City, and I do think I have a finger on the pulse of the culture right now, because Canada is very similar, particularly Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, to cities in the States.
Niagara Falls, St. Catharines, all along there.
They're a protected class. Now, who you should give money to? White males. They're not.
No.
And that's the truth. That's a protected class. The LGBT community right now can walk on water in the major cities of America and in Canada. Nothing is happening to them.
Joe, let me ask you a question. Let me. I know this is not part of our agenda for tonight. Okay. Bill Donahue of the Catholic League wrote an article about Caitlin Clark. You familiar with Caitlin Clark?
Sure.
Okay. Now, she is a stud. Any objective person, I don't care what walk of life you come from, okay? She is a basketball stud. That's what she is. She's gotten the WNBA, which, let's face it, nobody gives a crap about the WNBA until she came along, okay? She got checked. Joe, I know you've watched hockey in your life, okay? She got checked by a black lesbian basketball player, knocked on her ass, okay? And the whole sports media is kind of just shrugging it off as though it doesn't mean anything. She's the endangered species. Even though she's great, everybody, even Stephen A. Smith acknowledged how, LeBron James and others acknowledge just how great she is, put the WNBA in the back. My point is, Joe, certain groups can get away with anything. And
Well,
certain
sir,
groups can't get away with anything.
right now, I mean, that's always been the case. Getting back to the LGBT community, they're a protected class. That's a fact. And, speaking about what you're saying there, though, the league will stop that. And I'm going to tell you why, because she's bringing money in. That's going to
No, it's
end.
about the dial, Joe
No, but
Resinello.
it's a
What moves the
fact. Trust
dial?
me. Trust me when I tell you the commissioner of that league, like if I was the commissioner of that league, he does not care about black people, white people, lesbian people, straight people. He cares about money. And they will call all the presidents of every single team and say, if this doesn't stop, you will feel the burn.
Joe,
And that's why it will stop.
They have not been able to fly on private aircraft until Caitlin Clark came along.
But that's my point. This is just to be truthful. Charles Barkley, who I like because he speaks his mind, he said the same thing. He said, stop it because she's bringing in dollars. He gets it. And frankly, that's why that's going to stop. But getting back to the
go ahead, Joe. I want you to keep going.
LGBT community in Canada, ultimately, Canadians could do better with that money, is all I'm saying. That's nothing more than a show. Justin Trudeau is basically pandering to a voting class and ignoring the hurt of his own people. It's
Joe Resinello, I want
to
cut you off. I'm sorry, brother. I'm sorry, my brother, but we're going to talk about this for a second because this is going to segue into another conversation where I want to play a clip. Let's talk about what this $1.5 million, and I guess it's much more than that over the course of a few years. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Correct.
Okay. It's to offer protection for so-called LGBT people. But you can't show me, and you know he can't, nor can the politicians in America, where these people are under attack by so-called knuckle-dragging Neanderthals like us. But he's going to throw them millions of dollars under the idea that they need to be protected. I want to emphasize to anybody watching us here at the front line with Joe and Joe, they don't need to be protected because guess what? Joe, if they were being, real quick, and I want your comments, if they were being attacked, if any member of the transgender community was actually being physically assaulted, it would be all over the news. You know why it's not all over the news, Joe? Because it's not happening. What they want to do is they want to say, if Joe and Joe or Steve Bannon or Donald Trump or Michael Knowles or anybody turns around and says a man can't be in a woman and a woman can't be in a man, that's violence.
Well, Joe,
that's
if you want to see violence, and I posted this on my social media on Sunday, look at the first Saturday prayer witness in New York City.
It's disgusting. I watched it. It's disgusting.
That's violence. And if anyone is an endangered species, it's Christian men.
Joe,
in America. It's not the LGBT community, and that is nothing more than a show.
It's not a feather in my cap. I don't count it as that, but I just want to say that I've been there. Before I moved to Arizona, I've been in the face of those rabid. I'm sorry, they're animals. See, when you take your emotion and you allow your emotion to control your reason, you become an animal. So if I call you an animal, and Joe, I've seen them right in front of my face, right in front of my wife's face. Okay, when I used to go down there before I moved to Arizona to pray with Father Mashinsky and everybody, Father Fidelis, and all the prayer warriors down there. Joe, they're animals. They're animals. And guess what? If you put, I don't care how hyperbolic this sounds, if they all had a gun and those praying on the sidewalk did not have a gun and you gave them the choice to shoot us, they would do it in a second.
Well, it's coming. We're 2 steps away from that. 2 steps away from that. I'm going to be honest with you. Women should not be there. Those nuns,
women, Joe, you have to say, you know as well as I do, they're there by their own.
No,
they want to be there.
But here's the thing. It's not a place for a woman.
I'm going to agree with you.
I'm going to be honest. If I was the Cardinal of New York City, I would forbid it. And it should be men who are there.
Can I ask you a question? Can I ask you a question along those lines? And it is a question. If you're the Cardinal in New York City,
I would be there.
You call on all Catholic men, including yourself.
I would be there.
And you'd be there.
That's who should be there. And
You know,
I'll say,
Bishop Sam Aquila is in his 48th year of his priesthood today. That's on social media today. He's there.
well, I'll use a perfect example. The Missionaries of Charity in India take care of lepers, and lepers can be aggressive, and they have had a history of beating up nuns. The sisters don't deal with them anymore. The brothers work with the lepers in India because of that. That is not a place for women.
Right.
That's not being sexist. It just isn't, because it is going to get violent. It's not when, it's going, it's not if, it's when. And I'll be honest with you, I would forbid it. Like, that is not a place. I wouldn't bring my kids there. I wouldn't bring my wife there. That is a place for men. All the priests should be there, and the cardinal should be standing in front, because if the cardinal is there, the police will be there.
That's, well, you see, again,
People have to think.
Here you go, being practical again. Joe Resinello at the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, Joe Resinello, Way in the Breach. Please share this video wherever you're watching it. There you go, being practical again. I would tell Cardinal Dolan right to his face, if you're there, the cops are there.
And that's why he should. That's, you see, again, that's not being political. That's that's being a father. You see, a father protects his children.
Right.
I have 5. He has millions. And God is going to hold him. I'm not pointing fingers. I'm just telling you.
I know you're being,
but this
we're
is
always
just
respectful here.
But all I'm saying is a father protects. And ultimately, there's danger there. So therefore, as a father of 5 and I have a wife, I'm not bringing my wife in.
Joe, let me ask you a question. Let's look. We're from Newark, New Jersey. We understand the real reality of politics. You think if Cardinal Dolan was standing there on the sidewalk with a bunch of Catholic men and those rabid, I won't say the word, let's just call them those rabid animals, are in front of him, and they go to attack
They wouldn't even come close. The police would be there.
The mayor, who sympathizes with the animals, would turn around and say, don't
no,
do
but
that.
They can't. You have to see. The thing is, Christ says very clearly, you have to be shrewd. You're to be like lambs, but you have to be shrewd. It's the same thing with seeing through politicians. All Justin Trudeau is doing with this money going to he's buying votes.
Of course he is.
And he's taking money away from regular people.
In the meantime, in Canada, they can't buy a frigging gallon of milk.
That's my point. And this is where, again, people just don't see through the fog, Joe. They don't see through the fog. It's things are happening right in front of them. And I got news for you. The people who are pulling the strings, they do see it. They understand. Trust me. I've worked in corporate America for 26 years. They never tell you anything. You have to see through the lines to survive. And that's how it works. People don't see. They basically just get spoon-fed by the media, and frankly, they eat it up to their own detriment. And then you're told that it's not this one, it's that one, and they believe that too.
Joe, listen, until it happens to them, and that's why we're here at the front line with Joe and Joe. That's why many people are out there, Joe Resinello. They're trying to warn people. Don't think because you're looking at high-profile individuals that they're not targeting you. Yeah, our show. Joe, listen, I don't have a Christ complex. I don't pretend to be persecuted the way many people in this world are persecuted. They shadow ban our show. We've been at this for 6 years. Okay? And every time we gain an audience, we lose followers. It's all in their algorithm. They got it all hooked up. We don't cry persecution. You know what we do? Show up. That's what we do. You know who else shows up, Joe? Just going to throw this out to you. You know who else shows up? Steve Bannon shows up. And they say, well, that's happening to Steve Bannon. It's not going to happen to me. No. Whether it's Donald Trump, we'll get to him in a second, okay? Or Steve Bannon. No, it's happening to us.
What the fuck did you do to stop it? Here's what he did to stop it. Nothing. You know why they did nothing? Because it's too fucking hard to do it. They're gutless. The reason this country in the West is in the shape it's in is because The conservatives who talked a good game about doing better didn't have the balls to sit there and fight and say no. This is why you have moms going to school boards to throw this pornography out. The reason we're winning in the United States, we're not depending upon a conservative elite who are gutless and feckless. We're depending upon mothers and fathers and school boards. We're depending upon working class people who are taking their extra time to go to precinct strategy because they said, hey, we're prepared to stand and fight and not let our country be taken. And that's what's important. Everything else is just conversation. You have to have the political will and the muscle to sit there and say, they can call me a racist, they can call me a nativist, they can call me a xenophobe, a sexist, a homophobe, all of it. When they get to that name calling, that means they've lost the argument and we're winning. You've got to draw that pus, you've got to lance the boil and draw that pus out of the system. And the conservatives aren't prepared to do that. They'll curl up in the fetal position because they're not going to be acceptable with the clubs. You have to get over, you have to understand we're unclubbable. And we're unclubbable and we're fucking proud of it, okay? And we're going to save our country. And eventually, leaders will step up in England and come to the forefront and save the United Kingdom.
Joe Rossinello, he is absolutely right. And he echoes a lot of what we say on the show. Conservatives? Should I really blame liberals for let's say, or leftist oligarchs or whatever for the problems that we have? I blame conservatives. And Bannon's making that point. And by the way, he's actually set to, according to today, we didn't play that clip in front of the court. I wanted to play that clip that he was talking about there because that one gets to the heart of the matter. Steve Bannon, Joe, is about to go to jail for 4 months because conservatives have no, as he said, effing balls.
Well, let's break that story down. There's a lot.
Go ahead,
here.
please.
Basically, Bannon, Joe is correct. On July 1st, he's going to jail. Why? Bannon refused in 2021 to comply with a subpoena from the House, which was investigating January 6th. Okay. The judge that said he has to go to jail is a Trump appointee and clerked for Clarence Thomas. Let's be fair. Okay. Bannon blew off the panel by asserting executive privilege, despite the fact that he hadn't worked for the White House since 2017. This was 2021. If he had shown up, he would have avoided prison and he could have specified which questions he refused to answer. Now, this is my larger point. I like Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon is a 1%er. People forget that. Steve Bannon went to an Ivy League school. He worked for Goldman Sachs. He funded a lot of Hollywood productions, one of which is Seinfeld. Every time Seinfeld is played,
Steve Bannon gets paid.
So let me just set this up. Steve Bannon does not have to do this. And this is what I'm talking about. He sincerely cares about this country, whether you agree with him or not. Steve Bannon left the country club. He could be there and he isn't. Okay. With that said, Steve Bannon should have went to the hearing. He has no legal grounds. Or here's the deal. And this is the problem with sometimes the far right and the far left. They're in an echo chamber. They live in an echo chamber. I would say to him is this, Steve, if you want to play the civil disobedience game, then you got to go to jail because this judge isn't woke. This is a real judge. No one clerks for Clarence Thomas, believe me, and is woke. That's never going to happen. For 2 years, you work right next to him. Clarence Thomas is the best we have. So Steve Bannon is delirious. He says it's executive privilege. No, it's not, Steve. You haven't been in the White House at this point for 4 years.
Okay, Joe,
wait a minute. You
go
have
ahead.
to show up. You have to show up. Just like you and I have to pay taxes. A lot of our federal tax money goes to bad things. We could choose not to pay, but then you have to go to jail. And Steve, frankly, I like him. Steve is living in an echo chamber. Steve Bannon is, frankly, if you ask me, not in the right here, and has to go to jail. And that's
I
why he's
disagree.
going.
I'm gonna respectfully disagree with you because at some point, and even by the way, Joe, according to the law, if you want to go like that's the historical standard over the last 100 years. Whether we're talking about Stalin show trials, whether we're talking about the Nazis, whether according to the law, he might be guilty of something. That does not mean it's whether that does not determine whether or not it's right or wrong. Now, in our society, we do say, well, are we really that far gone? That maybe he should have. Maybe you're right, Joe Resinello. Maybe he should have gone. Maybe he should have responded. But do we try after? And I'm going to play another clip because then we're going to talk about Trump. Should he have? Should he have gone? Even though it was a Trump appointee, should he have gone to court? Should he have even dignified these charges? Should Trump have dignified these charges? My point is that there's something
Trump
amiss.
did.
There's something
Trump did.
amiss, Joe Resinello.
No, it is a
There's
miss.
something
But here's
going
the
on.
thing. If you're subpoenaed, you have to show up, just like you have to pay taxes, and you have to
Joe, when
fight.
we were kids, that's when you showed up for subpoenas. Nowadays, subpoenas are handed out like candy.
Well, Joe, I'll be honest with you. The judge isn't crazy. This is not a judge that doesn't know what a woman is. This is a real judge. And and this is the thing. There's ways to fight and there's ways not to fight. We have to be shrewd. There are so many things that I do that I think are ridiculous, but I have to do it. I have to do it because I live in the world. I have to pay taxes. I have to do certain things at work, not that go against my conscience. They're ridiculous, but I have to do it because I have to get paid, because I have to live. I'll be completely honest with you. I had to get the vaccine. I waited till November. My wife didn't get it. My children didn't get it. I had to get it.
Thank God.
Know why? Because I have to feed my family. I listen to people on social media and I laugh. That is simply a conversation for those who can. What are you going to do? Let your kids and wife starve because you are stubborn? I had to do it because I have to take care of my family because that's what a man does. And I got news for you. This is another thing.
But Joe, real quick, it doesn't make it less of an injustice.
I get it, but there's certain realities of life, Joe.
Okay, but here's
about living in echo chambers.
Let's take this a little bit further then. Let's take it. Okay, there's certain realities of life. You forced me because I have to take care of my family to get the jab, and I've gotten 2 of them, which I regret beyond belief.
So do I. I'm
okay. I get it. Okay, but now you're going to have to deal with my wrath. Okay, you're going to have to deal. You're going to have to deal with people. Hold on, Joe. Hold on. You're going to have to deal with my wrath. You're going to have to deal with people like this.
Gotta beat these people. I'm not trying to be dramatic here, but it's been a hard fight. And these people hate our children. Just take more calls. Go ahead, do the next person.
I know we disagree on this. I think he's being sincere. You don't.
Here's
my thing, Joe. Here's my thing. I agree with you. Look, not everybody is perpetual infelicity. Not everybody goes into the Coliseum is ready to get eaten by lions. Okay, I get it. We're called to that. That doesn't mean we have to do that. All right. And you're right. You have to put food on the table. And our blessed Lord knows that making the decisions we make are not selfish, but self.
No, but there's a way to fight.
But Joe, here, real quick, and I want you to answer this real quick. But they have to deal with the response that we have when the time comes that we have the power to do so.
Well,
and that's what Bannon's talking about.
Ways to fight. Bannon, I'll be honest with you. I respect that he's fighting for people. I respect the fact that he left his privileged place, but I think he could have fought more effectively. There's sometimes things you have to do that you don't like. My mother taught me that years ago, and she always did them first. Get them over with. There's reality to life. You can't live in an echo chamber. Life isn't pure. What I mean by that is this. Again, we all pay federal taxes. Our taxes right now are used for things we don't even want to. And here's the thing, you have a choice. Don't pay, then go to jail, because it's reality. Now, there's hills to die on. There are hills to die on.
Well, he's dying on this one.
Well,
he said
my
that
point
he's
is,
going to
I
die
think
on this
this
one.
one wasn't the hill to die on. Just show up and answer the questions you have to answer.
Why?
Don't answer
Why, Joe? Here's my question.
because
Why?
you don't go.
No, because if you're an oligarch and you're an autocrat and you're asking me questions that you know you have no right to, and I know you have no right to, I know the system, Joe, allows for that. I get it. Okay, I get it. The Soviet system allowed for Stalin to have show trials where people technically were found guilty in a court of law. In the meantime, it was just the will of the emperor. It was the will of Stalin. This is the will of Barack Obama. Excuse me, Joe Biden, or excuse me, the oligarch,
Agreed.
or whoever. This is the will of Steve Bannon has to go down. Now, Joe, even I want to throw one concept over to you, and I want your response. I mean it. I want an honest response from you. If for no other reason, he's a Catholic brother, and I want to defend him. If for no other reason.
I try to look at things not from a tribal perspective. And like I said, Joe Biden's a Catholic brother, and I disagree with him.
He's not my Catholic. I'm sorry, Joe. He's not my Catholic brother.
He's a baptized Catholic.
He is, but he's not my brother. He's not my brother.
Everyone's my brother. I try to listen to everybody. I really do. And I'm going to be honest with you. There's ways to fight, and you see, sometimes, again, getting back to the echo chamber, it's healthy to listen to people. You don't have to agree with them, because when you listen to people, you see them as human. And here's the thing. Of course, it's a show trial. Joe, I got news for you. The Senate and the Congress is a show trial. When Ted Cruz grandstands and grills Merrick Garland, that's nothing but a farce, because nothing happens. It's all a farce.
It's funny you're saying that. It's funny
you're saying because that. It is. Hey, it's all a farce. But what I'm talking about is fighting smart. I'm not going to die on a hill I don't have to die on. There's
Joe, but people going to jail is not a hill to die on.
Joe, all he had to do is show up, and on the questions he didn't want to answer, just say, I'm not answering that. And then you don't go to jail, and you continue to be effective in your role. Okay, he takes himself out of the role because he's cutting his nose off to spite his face. There's times and ways to fight.
But Joe, there is one practical thing he's got that he maybe I'm throwing it over. Joe, I'm not being a lot of this is me just kind of being devil's advocate.
No, I get it.
Steve Bannon is worth a lot of money.
Yes,
he was Goldman Sachs guy going back in the day.
Hundreds of millions of dollars.
Oh, no. Steve Bannon, don't worry. Financially speaking, Steve Bannon could go to jail for 20 years. Now it's going to hurt him. It won't hurt his family because Steve Bannon is financially okay. But that doesn't mean he's not sacrificing. He's not.
Oh, he is. No, I get it. Where we disagree is I think he could have avoided this one. By the way, he's going to be sentenced in another criminal trial in New York State, and he's going to get banged on that one. This one he could have avoided by just showing up. Joe, there's things in life. Listen, there's things in life, the reality. You're an adult and you know this. How many times your boss asks you to do something that's straight up and down stupid? You have to do it because you have to work there. That doesn't compromise yourself. It's just dumb. So you do it because you have to work there. That's part of being an adult. This was avoidable. All you got to do is show up.
Unless he's using Joe. Unless he's using
going there on purpose to rally. I thought of that.
And here's the thing. Some might say that Martin Luther King did the same thing by going to jail. And again, we all know the power of martyrdom because we're Roman Catholic. So we know that. Okay. The power of the example of those who allow themselves to be persecuted. Now, I'm not denigrating certainly the martyrs of the early church and Perpetua and Felicity and all the Saint Stephen and all those people died for Jesus Christ. Okay. I'm not trying to denigrate that in any way. There is a power in allowing the oppressors, the those who would commit injustices on you, to do that so that you could respond to that and awaken other people to that.
That could be a strategy. I'm not in his head, and I actually thought of that too, that he thinks that maybe that could rally people. That's possible. All I'm saying is this, because I've seen it. It's on both sides of the aisle. Echo chambers are dangerous because it's good to talk to somebody that doesn't agree with you. It doesn't change your mind, but it's healthy. I work with tons of people that don't agree with me. I work in New York City. I work with tons of people that they don't sway me. I go to mass every lunch and they know I do and have for years. My point is, it's healthy though. Living in a chamber where you only hear the same thing, frankly, sometimes, and also the executive privilege, Steve, it's not an executive privilege. You went to an Ivy League school. You haven't worked in the White House at this point for 4 years. The judge subpoenaed you. He's not insane. Unfortunately, you have two choices: go to jail or show up. And I think it wasn't the hill to die on. There comes a time when you do have to die. But on I've learned this in life too, in my job. To get things done, sometimes you have to talk to people you don't like at work. Work with them.
I
And
will agree with you, Joe Rossinello. I will agree with you that, and we've said on this show a million times at the front line with Joe and Joe. Please, if you like this video, if you like what Joe and I do here Thursday nights, 9 o'clock Eastern time, please share it. I will say this, that you're right. There are hills to die on. Now, Steve Bannon has obviously chosen his. I'm not even going to say I disagree with you that maybe he should not have. Maybe he should just have gone to answer their questions. But is it that for the individual to decide?
it's his choice. I'm just saying I would have played it a little differently. Like on this one. Like if I have to go to jail, there comes a time for me to go to jail. If I could avoid it by simply just showing up and on questions I don't want to ask, because here's another thing, and said a lot about this to me. Clarence, this is not an insane judge. This is not a bull crap. This is not like some witch hunt. The judge is upholding the law. It's a subpoena. And all you got to do is just sit there and just say, yep, no, I'm not going to answer that. And then you go home. That's it.
He could. I'm going to go ahead and agree with you on that, Joe Rossinello, here at the front line with Joe and Joe. And I and obviously from both of us, I'm sure, and I know I'm speaking for you, we wish Steve Bannon well, and we will
I like
support
the
him.
guy. I
We
don't
will support him
dislike
in any way. I love Steve Bannon. I really do. He's got balls, Joe. I will say that.
I will agree.
Dude's got balls.
I would agree.
Now, remember, there's a lot of guys, Joe, in human history that have had balls. Julius Caesar had them, and Alexander the Great had them. Like, there's a lot of guys who have them. It's a matter of whether or not you're actually applying them in the right way. And let's give from the front line with Joe and Joe to Steve Bannon. We hope you're doing the right thing, and we will support you in the direction you want to go in. And I think, Joe, I know I speak for you in that way. We wish him well. He is our Catholic brother. He is our Catholic brother, and he's unabashedly, by the way. Him, Jack Posobiec, a lot of people he has, they're all faithful Catholics. They're not wishy-washy, blah, blah, blah. Joe Biden is that. Well, we won't get into that now. But here's the thing. Joe, let's talk about for a second, all right, at the front line with Joe and Joe, those who enable. Joe, growing up in Newark, let me give you an example. Those who would enable one of your friends who has unfortunately stumbled into drug addiction, marijuana use, then go into pills, then go into coke, then go into this and go with that. What is the proper response? The proper response is to tell that person the truth, to get in there and to tell them what you're doing is wrong. You don't encourage your friend to go down a rabbit hole that they can't get out of. You're supposed to pull them out. Okay. I don't know what our House Republicans are doing. Okay. And maybe it's a poor analogy. I don't know. If you're in the chat room, you can tell me I'm full of crap. But here's the thing. The Republicans in the House. Here, I'll play the clip and you tell me.
On this one too, Mike Johnson. Stop everything in Congress. Subpoena everyone. Don't take summer recess. Don't take weekends. Don't even get up to go to the bathroom. Get in there and subpoena everyone. This judge, his daughter, everyone affiliated with anything ever. I don't care if we stop building bridges and highways and stop funding our government. You fight fire with fire. Otherwise, these Marxists are going to keep doing this. And red state AGs, you guys better start hammering these people. You have the opportunity now. They cleared the way. Look, Democrats took what they alleged was a federal misdemeanor from the FEC and made it a state felony 34 times over. There's no rules, apparently. Step up.
There's no rules, apparently. Step up. If you have to get into the breach, as we say all the time, roll up your sleeves. And the example I gave, again, it might have been a poor analogy, but nonetheless, what I'm trying to say is you have to, when you're trying to do the right thing, when you're trying to help people, Joe Resinello, that means that you have to throw off all the bullshit. You have to throw it off. You've said on this show at the Frontline with Joe and Joe a million times, these guys are all full of crap. Mike Johnson, Lindsey Graham in the Senate, all of them. None of them stand up for what's right because none of them actually try to tell their friends the truth. And the truth that we have to tell to our friends is they want Donald Trump dead.
Let me just break down this because this is so.
Please do, please. I know I went
Okay.
on a little bit of a rant there, Joe, and I apologize. But please break it down.
What that guy says is spot on if the system was legit. The system is basically a thumb is on the scale, and the thumb is money. Joe, and that's where I disagreed with what Bannon said. He said they're feckless. Actually, Steve, they get it. Just like Mike Johnson gets it. When Mike Johnson took that job, I got 2 homework assignments for everyone listening to this. Listen to Mike Johnson's speech when he accepted the job as the Speaker of the House. You would have thought the man signed the Declaration of Independence. I listened to the whole thing. It's about 45 minutes. I was so impressed. How does a person like that change? How? I'll tell you. He saw that he could get nothing done based upon that speech. So it's go along to get along or get steamrolled. You see, people have to open their eyes. The thumb is on the scale and the thumb is money. Now, what that guy just said is right. If it was legit. Second homework assignment for our listeners. Listen to the interview with Russell Brand and Tulsi Gabbard, and she breaks down an average day of a congressman. In that interview, you will learn that all they do is meet with lobbyists and donors. That is what the majority of their day is, how it's spent. Now, what does that tell you objectively? It tells you this. Their constituency is not you, it's those who are giving money. And that is why it's not about being feckless. They don't represent us. The Republicans are nothing more than a controlled opposition. They're on a leash. They're on a leash. Notice the Koch brothers. They give money to both sides because they're above politics. It's for them. This is nothing more than a show, Joe. And that's why I don't listen to it anymore. I don't listen to Ted Cruz. I don't listen. It's a show. We have to fix the system, and then we could have debates.
Do you know that Patrick Deneen was recently did an interview with Bishop Barron? Did you see that?
I didn't yet, but it's something. In fact, I'll probably listen to it tomorrow.
I got an ebook. I ordered it from, and I would recommend to anybody who order Regime Change by Patrick Deneen. Joe and I had the privilege of interviewing Patrick Deneen, Notre Dame professor, political philosopher. And really what he's saying is that liberalism has failed. That was the conversation that you and I had with him, that liberalism has failed. This idea that you could do whatever you want, you're your own autonomous being, and you could do whatever you want, that's failed. It's demonstrable. And that's what he had in the first book. Second book is regime change. And what does it look like? Joe Rossinello, what does it look like? Now, I would ask you a question. Is the, let's say there was a hot civil war, Joe. We don't want that. You and I don't want that. I don't want people dead in the street. I don't want any of that. I don't want any of that BLM bullshit that happened in 2020 and Antifa and all that. I don't want any of that stuff. Okay. I don't want people dying. Okay. Unfortunately, it might come to that point. What does the regime look like if that was to happen? And let's say, for argument's sake, their side wins or our side wins. What does that look like? Because guess what? Does our Constitution change? Does our Constitution become irrelevant and we have a new Constitution? Do we do what we do after the Civil War and have, let's say, for amendments to the Constitution? So we keep the structure in place, but we have all these amendments. What form does it take? And you want to know what, Joe? I'm being very, very hypothetical right now, and I apologize, but I really want your response to this. Does anybody really even think that far into the future? Because I don't think they do. I don't really think. I think people are so worried about what they get in the moment right now, and they don't think that far. And that's why I brought up Patrick Deneen, because that would involve a transformation of America, and I don't think people are actually prepared for that.
Well, they're definitely not. I mean, Patrick Deneen, what he basically said, it was liberalism won, but because it won, it will collapse under its own weight. And let's make no mistake, it has won. They control every institution of power in America. Also, get this out of your head. There is no civil war because this is not 1860. The American military will crush any uprising of any group of individuals in this country, whether it's BLM or it's the Proud Boys, in hours. Crush them like little children. With Apache helicopters, with frigging missiles that could come through my window right now and hit me in the forehead. So the only way that ever would happen, and this is historically speaking in the 20th century, if the military had a coup. That's how it happens. It will get that out of your head. That's an echo chamber pipe dream. Whenever I hear that,
I was bringing it up.
But whenever I hear that, I immediately
I did.
No, but when people actually seriously think that, I'm just like, you're living in friggin' the metrics. That's not happening.
But what you're saying.
But here's the thing about
go ahead.
just in terms of like, they control every institution. America and Americans, if you ask me, have to see that your neighbor who disagrees with you, and you do disagree, you're all getting flushed down the toilet if the system falls apart. There's a very thin layer of society that will sustain itself, as is in South America. In places like Colombia, people live behind walls. The rest of society lives on scraps. We have to realize that, frankly, they want us divided, that our system no longer works. And when people come together and basically say, at this point in time, we have some differences, but there are larger problems like I can't eat. I can't put fuel in my car. I can't afford oil for my house. And
I wonder how much people are going to worry about their abortion rights when they can't put food.
No, I got news for you. They won't. You see, I'm going to give you the example. Brazil. There isn't really a race problem in Brazil. Know why? Because everyone's poor.
They're a class problem.
No, but yes, but that's the direction it's going in this country. Joe, the middle class is shrinking. The largest exchange of money just took place in the history of America as a result of COVID. It's shrinking. And here's the thing, to your point, too many people think, well, I'm kind of in the upper middle class. I kind of have an extra shore house, and
Do
I
they
have a
think,
fancy-"
Joe Rassinello, do
They
they
think
think
they're going to be safe. They're
well, do
not.
they think okay, do they think that they're not going to die? Like, I hate to
No,
sound
but
so
they actually think that they're going to weather this
how? How? No,
because
like, I
they're
would like to break it
delusional.
to people. Look, power is one thing, money is another. People equate money with power, but they're not the same thing. Okay. If you have money, that does not mean you have power. So the bottom line is this: when the shit hits the fan, okay, and you have what, 10, 15, 20 million, do you think you're rich in America? If you have $10 million, yeah, okay, you're doing real well. You're certainly not suffering. Okay. But do you really think you're rich? And do you really think that when all the crap comes down, it's not going to affect you? Here, Joe, we started this conversation talking about the theme of this show was death. Let me play this for you.
He's come down 34 yesterday, and your father goes out there and just basically raises the middle finger and says, we're going to win anyway.
This was a rigged, disgraceful trial. The real verdict is going to be November 5th by the people, and they know what happened here, and everybody knows what happened here.
And within hours, Benny Thompson of Mississippi, who's a monster, Democratic congressman, introduces legislation to pull his Secret Service. Yeah. So basically they're saying, okay, we'll kill you now.
If he goes to prison, we want to pull his Secret Service. So basically, if we put him in a cell, we're going to put him in a place where he could be murdered.
But that's
by,
a death threat.
Of course it is, but
from a member of Congress.
Again, should it surprise us? I mean, you look at half the congressmen, you get in their faces, make them feel it. I mean, they can say these things and they are lauded as heroes. If we said something even remotely like that, we're literally in.
He's come down 34.
So where I'm going with this is that in that clip, what you see is that they will, and that they are the enemies of humanity. Okay, that's what they are. And we're going to play another clip in a little bit with Jordan Peterson and Tucker Carlson, okay, talking about similar things. Is that death is, it doesn't matter. You see, you're dealing with people, Joe, and we started out this conversation talking about those who lack hope, those who don't believe in anything transcendent, whether it be the Catholic God and the God that the Catholic Church proposes, or any other God. There's nothing transcendent. There is no natural law. Yuval Harari says that, makes it abundantly clear you have no rights. That's his way of saying, if I can cut you open and cut your throat and put you in the friggin' ground, you have no rights. You have no inherent dignity. Joe, they say it every day. And here's my issue, and I want to throw it over to you. There's a lot of people that don't have a problem with that.
That's a problem, Joe. What he's saying is true. Many people, by any means necessary, they're going to stop Donald Trump. Taking his Secret Service away from him is saying we want him killed.
Why is that, guy? Let me ask you, and I know I'm being so hypothetical right now, but and you can't answer it and I can't answer it. Why is Benny Johnson not in an orange jumpsuit for threatening the former president of the United States by taking away his Secret Service protection?
Why is it Maxine Waters in a jumpsuit?
Oh, yeah.
But here's the thing. Like, let's be honest. The people who control everything see Donald Trump as a threat.
And they don't see them as a threat.
You see, but not enough people see that. See, RFK, I'm going to be honest with you. We'll use 2-3 people that are very different. Bernie Sanders, RFK, and Donald Trump. Very different. What do they have in common? They're anti-establishment. Bernie Sanders, before he ran for president, what I heard was he was the most hated man in the Senate by both the Republicans and the Democrats because he didn't play ball. Mm-hmm. And the power brokers, not the faces that we see in those ridiculous Congress hearings that are nothing short of a waste of time, but the power brokers.
It's very frustrating to watch those people.
But I don't pay attention to it anymore because I don't believe in it anymore. The power brokers that pull the strings of those people ultimately see them as a threat and will never allow them to have power. Bernie Sanders, RFK, or Donald Trump. They want someone they can control, like George W. Bush, like Barack Obama, like Joe Biden, like Kamala Harris, like Bill Clinton. They're controllable. And who's another one that wasn't allowed to be the president? Was Jimmy Carter. His own party attacked him because he didn't play ball, and they got rid of him. I don't agree with Jimmy Carter, but Jimmy Carter didn't go along, so he had to get along. Get out, Jim. Go and build houses. They are about power. They're not about you, and people have to see that. And when
People
we
don't,
do, Joe,
but
we
many people,
unite.
but Joe, many people in America, because they're union or because they're minority or for a variety of different reasons, excuse me, they say that still is my party. And I would
That's
say
a
that, you know
mistake.
what? You know who your friends are? Your friends are not Joe Biden or Dick Durbin or Kamala Harris or Cory Booker or anyone. You know who your friends are? Your friends are Joe and Joe.
Joe, 100%. And let me give you an example that's going on right now. You're seeing in the Black community rappers. You're seeing people on the streets.
Did you see?
Hear me out.
Go ahead.
They're saying they've been betrayed by the very people they thought were on their side. And by the way, the Democrats saw this coming. They saw that the Black vote, they know the line that they needed to get in. They had to get a certain percentage of the African-American population in cities, and they weren't going to get it. So what did they do? They opened up the borders to get a new voting class. And the Black vote, I'm listening to it in speeches. I'm listening to it in people on the streets. They're like, they're giving our facilities to these immigrants because they used you. And these very people that you think that you're part of a tribe and they represent you, Republicans and Democrats alike, turn Fox off and turn off NBC.
That's
They
right.
represent you. They're using you. And you're going to be thrown aside. And that's happening in real time right now.
You watch and you could watch how the mainstream media, because at the end of the day, one of the main shoes that has to drop is the mainstream media has to have their power taken away from them, is their view towards African Americans and Hispanic Americans. Hispanic Americans predominantly, once they know what the Democrat Party is about, they're not for it. Because all those people that come across the border primarily are Catholic or some form of Christian or are pro-life. They don't want to hear about gay marriage. They don't want to hear about any of this transgender stuff and all that. And African-American Snoop Dogg came out recently and said that he's going to support Donald Trump. This is the same guy that a couple of years ago did a video mocking the execution of Donald Trump. Now, here's the thing. Let's play this, Joe, and we'll wrap up the show with this video.
May I just answer one question raised by your eloquent and absolutely right analysis of the World Economic Forum, and that is, what spirit animates them? Well, if you believe people are the problem, then that is, of course, a genocidal spirit. If I believe that the problem with my kitchen is it has too many mice, the solution is to kill the mice. Too many roaches, I kill the roaches. They're the problem. They're the impediment. And so make no mistake, and this sort of tracks with what I was saying earlier, don't lie to yourself about the agenda. If people are the problem and you're a person, then your life is in the way of whatever goals they're seeking to achieve. By definition, am I missing something? No, I'm not. But all of us, it's so grotesque because, to further elaborate in one sense, it's a demonic spirit, just to be clear. Any spirit that seeks to hurt, kill, divide, demoralize other people is a demonic spirit by definition. So that's what animates it. You're the target, and don't lie to yourself.
Don't lie to yourself is the point. Is that I would tell people that, Joe, disagree with us on a number of different things. Don't lie to yourself. You're irrelevant too. See, these are people, and Tucker Carlson has it exactly right now. I'm going to throw it over to you, Joe, to wrap it up. There are those who hate humanity. They have a very dim view of humanity. They don't have even a remotely, forget about a Catholic or Christian worldview of humanity. They see no intrinsic value in the individual person. And therefore you could go. Now, we've seen this play out. It's not like this is pie in the sky conspiracy theory. We've seen this play out. post-Enlightenment, the Enlightenment was a reaction to, let's say, for argument's sake, Christian civilization going back 1,000 years. And then it devolved. Yes, I'm using that word specifically, devolved, both in the Protestant Reformation with Martin Luther, but then in the Enlightenment thinkers like Hume and others, and it devolved into secularism to the point where we've now gotten back before Christianity, before the Catholic Church built Western civilization on the ruins of the Roman Empire. The Romans believed, even though there were some virtuous people like Cicero and others who talked about virtue, that at the end of the day, some human beings didn't matter. Okay. That's the way it is. Eastern religions obviously think the same way. After 1,000 years of Catholic reign in Europe and building Western civilization, Joe Resinello, then you have Enlightenment, you have secularism, and it all devolves, okay, Protestantism, and it all devolves to the point where we're back to the same point. And this is where I'm going to throw it over to you. In the modern world, human beings mean nothing. The unfortunate part this time is that many people in the world agree with their oppressors that they are nothing, and that's why they have so much power. That's a little bit of a rant. I'm going to throw it over to you for the final word, whether you agree or not, Joe.
Ultimately, the oppressor, as you put it, is masked. He does not represent the common man. Ultimately, what you just described is what's called eugenics. What that basically means is this: there are some people that shouldn't reproduce. There are some people that are worth less than others. That's why Planned Parenthood clinics are in poor neighborhoods. They're not in rich neighborhoods. That's why they're in African American and Latino neighborhoods. Over 70% of them are there. And they're there for a reason. Don't bring that in my neighborhood. That could stay where you live. Ultimately, what people have to see is they don't represent you. This tribe that you think you belong to will betray you as they're betraying the African American community right now in real time, because they have a new group that they're going to rely on for votes. You're not coming through, so you're out. Ultimately, regular people have to see that the very people you think are on your side aren't, and the people that maybe that disagree with you and do disagree with you, you're both going to get flushed down the toilet. So it's about time that we see things for who and what they really are, who the real enemy is and who isn't. And many times, if you look deep within yourself, you'll see that the real enemy is not your neighbor. The real enemy is the establishment that no longer represents you. And until you figure that out, you're going to be bickering with your neighbor, and that's exactly where they want you, because then they have you.
Joe, I wish people, we started this show a long time ago, and we're growing, thank God, and we ask you to share this wherever you can, particularly on X. It's a matter of raising people's consciousness. Why? Because they're going to agree with us on everything? No, they're not going to. But if at the very least on these very fundamental concepts like death, I said the theme of this show is death. Talk about death to Donald Trump. Tucker Carlson talks about their view of humanity is that you're a virus. Go watch the movie The Matrix and the villain in The Matrix. Hollywood many times has it right, because Hollywood agrees with a lot of this crap, where the villain in The Matrix says human beings are a virus. This is the way they view people. The only thing is, though, the only human beings that are viruses are all out there, certainly not them and their families, and they seek to set up systems that reinforce that. And I will say this, and then we'll go, Joe, is that Christianity and the Catholic Church in particular has a worldview that is directly opposed to that. And that if you feel in your heart and in your mind that you are special without anybody telling you, with any human, Joe and Joe, your priest, your rabbi, your this or that or whatever the guy, you just that you're not an accident of evolution, that you actually have a purpose and meaning to your life. If you came to acknowledge that, then many of these people, Joe, would not have the power that they have. And unfortunately, they do. And it's our job, Joe and Joe, and many, many, many people out there, to make sure that we could do whatever we can to raise the consciousness of the American people, so to better our state and bring power back to ourselves to create a society that we know would be a good and just society for all its problems. Because Joe, not for nothing, right now I feel I'm in Dante's seventh circle of hell in America. So the only place to really go is up, if you know what I'm saying. Joe, I'll give you 30 seconds for the final word.
I'll be honest. I think we've said it all. You know, not to beat a dead horse. All I would say is this: get out of your echo chamber. Listen to different voices. Turn off the mainstream media. Listen to intellectual voices out there. That's what I try to do. Different voices. You'll learn something. Ultimately, what you're seeing in the mainstream is nothing more than regurgitation. It's nothing more from the Fox perspective as the controlled opposition throwing talking points at you, and MSNBC is doing the exact same thing. What I would just say is turn off the news. Find specific individuals. They could be academics. Read a book, read a journal. Get a perspective that's not being presented. And if you do that, it'll help. It will open your mind. And ultimately, as your mind broadens, and this is anyone could do that because anyone could read. If you do that, if you ask me, you'll look at the world a little differently. You'll look at your neighbor a little differently, and you'll look at our government a little differently. And the sooner people do see it that way, the better things will get, because we're more alike than we think.
I would agree with you on that. And and that's a whole conversation we could have, but we'll save that for the next time. Thank you, everyone, for joining us here at the Frontline with Joe and Joe. Please share this video if you like what Joe and I do, our conversations and the things that we do here and what we like to talk about because we think they're important. Please share it, whether it's on X, whether it's on YouTube, Facebook, Rumble. We always thank you for your support. There's many in the chat room right now that are with us, and they're with us week in, week out. Thursday nights, 9 o'clock Eastern time. Joe and I are putting together a plan where we're going to get a lot more of our content out there so that people could hear our conversations. We have great interviews that are all over our social media. Please, we mentioned Patrick Deneen before. That's a great conversation, by the way. Not only Patrick Deneen's conversation with us, but Patrick Deneen's conversation with Bishop Barron, talking about things that are important to all of us in our lives, our system of government, and the world we live in. Please educate yourselves. It doesn't have to be Joe and I. We're not so great. There's, like Joe said, there's many people out there who are offering a different perspective than the media is. The media is your enemy. Trump, if I'm going to end with this, was right about a few things. One of the main things he was right about was the media is the enemy of the American people. As an American citizen, ditch them. Ditch Fox News, ditch CNN, ditch MSNBC, ditch them all. Your best source of news right now in America is on social media. That's enough of my rant. Joe Arsenello, great conversation. Hopefully we get through to some people. I love our disagreements sometimes because they're always a little bit fun.
It's all good.
They're always a little bit fun. Yeah, again, we're not homogeneous here. We want to throw ideas back and forth and test them out. So, Joe, excellent conversation. Remember, until the next time, that our conversation is your conversation, and that conversation is going